Greetings, fellow humans. Katrina here. Quick disclaimer, I'm a professional. I'm not your professional. Anything I'm about to say should not be taken as medical, legal, or otherwise advice. This podcast is purely for education and amusement. That is it. Disclaimer over. So today, unfortunately, I do not have the news for you. I looked in the Library of Congress, I searched the newspapers, and I could not find March 11th, 1922. So we won't be doing the news today. But what I will be talking about is what I don't know about flashbacks. And believe it or not, even though I've been doing counseling for almost a decade, there are still things for me to learn. And so I don't have all of these types of flashbacks memorized, but these are some perfectionist attacks and endangerment attacks that can happen with post-traumatic stress. And this is straight out of Pete Walker's Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. I'm looking at page 170 to page 172. And I'm just going to read off what some of these are because I have an excellent reading voice and I know that people are interested in this topic. So without further ado, here we go. Perfectionism attacks. The first one is straight up perfectionism. My perfectionism arose as an attempt to gain safety and support in my dangerous family. Perfection is a self-persecutory myth. I do not have to be perfect to be safe or loved in the present. I am letting go of relationships that require perfection. I have a right to make mistakes. Mistakes do not make me a mistake. Every mistake or mishap is an opportunity to practice loving myself in the places I have never been loved. Oh yeah, it talks a bit about how to combat these flashbacks. So that's a treat as well. Number 2, all or nothing and black and white thinking. I reject extreme or overgeneralized descriptions, judgments, or criticism. When negative happenstance does not mean I am stuck in a never-ending pattern of defeat. Statements that describe me as always or never, this or that, are typically grossly inaccurate. And I totally agree with that. Number 3 is self-hate, disgust, and toxic shame. I commit to myself. I am on my side. I am a good enough person. I refuse to trash myself. I turn shame back into blame and disgust and externalize it to anyone who shames my normal feelings and foibles. As long as I am not hurting anyone, I refuse to be shamed for normal emotional responses like anger, sadness, fear, and depression. I especially refuse to attack myself for how hard it is to completely eliminate the self-hate habit. Number 4, this is another perfectionism attack. Micromanagement, worrying, obsessive looping, or over-futurizing. I will not repetitively examine details over and over. I will not jump to negative conclusions. I will not endlessly second-guess myself. I cannot change the past. I forgive all my past mistakes. I cannot make the future perfectly safe. I will stop hunting for what could go wrong. I will not try to control the uncontrollable. I will not micromanage myself or others. I work in a way that is good enough, and I accept the existential fact that my efforts sometimes bring desired results, and sometimes they do not. There is this serenity prayer that he writes in here, and there's secular versions of it, but I'll go ahead and read what's written here. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's the original serenity prayer, but I want to give you the more secular serenity affirmation. And that one is, today I seek the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know that one is me. Moving back to the perfectionism attacks, number 5 is unfair/devaluing comparisons to others or to your most perfect moments. I refuse to compare myself unfavorably to others. I will not compare my insides to their outsides. I will not judge myself for not being at peak performance all of the time. In a society that pressures us into acting happy all the time, I will not get down on myself for feeling bad. These things are all easier said than done. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. Easier said than done. Number 6 is guilt. Feeling guilty does not mean I am guilty. I refuse to make my decisions and choices from guilt. Sometimes I need to feel the guilt and do it anyway. In the inevitable instances when I inadvertently hurt someone, I will apologize, make amends, and let go of my guilt. I will not apologize over and over. I am no longer a victim. I will not accept unfair blame. Guilt is sometimes camouflaged fear. I feel guilty and afraid, but I am not guilty or in danger. Number 7 is shoulding. Actually, let's go back to guilt for a moment. My own personal perspective on guilt is similar to Brene Brown's. We have that I did something bad. And the reality is that there is inappropriate guilt. When we have not violated our own moral code, we don't have to feel guilty. That's my perspective. Number 7, shoulding. I will substitute the words want to for should, and only follow this imperative if it feels like I want to, unless I'm under legal, ethical, or moral obligation. That's a factor. Number 8, overproductivity / workaholism or busyaholism. I am a human being, not a human doing. I will not choose to be perpetually productive. I am more productive in the long run when I balance work with play and relaxation. I will not try to perform at 100% all of the time. I subscribe to the normalcy of vacillating along a continuum of efficiency. Number 9 of perfectionism attacks. This is the last one of those. Harsh judgment of self and others / name calling. I will not let the bullies and critics of my early life win by joining and agreeing with them. I refuse to attack myself or abuse others. I will not displace the criticism and blame that rightfully belongs to my dysfunctional caretakers onto myself or current people in my life. And he has a quote here from Jane Eyre that says, quote, I care for myself. The more solid, I'll retry that. I care for myself, the more solitary, the more friendless, and the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself. Jane Eyre. And then moving on to endangerment attacks. Oh, I'd like to put on the table that overproductivity thing. I've kind of gotten away from that. I used to be like that. I used to self-identify as a workaholic. And then I learned that work can be more fun if we accept that there are times when we do not need to be working. And so even like this podcast, I schedule it in to when I'm going to be working instead of eating up my personal time for doing this. And I'm also not into the perfectionist thing about like my podcast has to be the best audio quality ever. No, I'm recording this in my office right now on my Bluetooth headphones, so the audio quality might not be as awesome as it usually is when I record it with my home microphone. And I'm cool with that. How cool is that? Okay, on to endangerment attacks. Number 10. Drasticizing / catastrophizing / hypochondriacizing. I feel afraid, but I am not in danger. I am not in trouble with my parents. I will not blow things out of proportion. I refuse to scare myself with thoughts and pictures of my life deteriorating. No more homemade horror movies and disaster flicks. I will not turn every ache and pain into a story about my imminent demise. I am safe and at peace. Number 11, negative focus. I renounce over noticing and dwelling on what might have been wrong with me or my life around me. I will not minimize or discount my attributes. Right now, I notice, visualize, and enumerate my accomplishments, talents, and qualities, as well as many gifts that life offers me. For example, nature, music, film, food, beauty, color, friends, pets, etc. Number 12 Time urgency. I am not in danger. I do not need to rush. I will not hurry unless it is a true emergency. I am learning to enjoy my daily activities at a relaxed pace. Number 13, disabling performance anxiety. I reduce procrastination by reminding myself that I will not accept unfair criticism or perfectionist expectations from anyone. Even when afraid, I will defend myself from unfair criticism. I won't let fear make my decisions. I used to. I had the idea to start this podcast back in 2016, and I officially started this podcast in 2020 or 21. Oh my goodness, the years start blurring together. But I finally started the podcast because I no longer had the debilitating fear that nobody wants to listen to me. And the reality is that I get downloads every single week. So somebody out there is listening, and I appreciate that you exist, in case I didn't say that already. Number 14, perseverating about being attacked. Unless there are clear signs of danger, I will thought stop my projection of past bullies/critics onto others. The vast majority of my fellow human beings are peaceful people. I have legal authorities to aid in my protection if threatened by the few who aren't. I invoke thoughts and images of my friends' love and support. Now, I used a pretty big word in that last one because that was the big fancy word that he used in the book, perseverating. I'll spell it, or I'll spell perseverate, and that's the word you should look up. Perseverate, perseverate. And it basically means going round and round with whatever is going on in our mind, even though the stimulus for that distress is already gone. And so, like I said, these are types of common inner critic attacks. Actually, I might have said that these are flashbacks when I first started this. In any case, there are 14 common inner critic attacks, and they sound a whole heck of a lot like cognitive distortions, which I believe were originally named by Erickson. Oh, but do not quote me on that. But the cognitive behavioral therapy was brand new back in the day, and they identified these cognitive distortions like mind reading, shoulds, labeling, generalization, minimizing, rationalization. All of these cognitive distortions are like twisted thoughts, not twisted in a weird or wrong or bad way, but they're just alterations of reality that aren't necessarily accurate. And if you go back a few episodes, I do believe that I list the cognitive distortions as well as some ways to challenge some of those. So these common inner critic attacks included some ways to challenge it. And so I highly recommend reading this book if you haven't already. Once again, it's by Pete Walker, and it's Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. Is that all the treatment that is needed for complex PTSD? No. Contact your local medical professionals for additional treatment if you think that you have any sort of post-traumatic stress. Don't just read books. Get treatment, okay? If you want to support the show, you can click the button on the website or Cash App Katrinadragon. And as always, I really do appreciate each and every one of you simply for existing.